It's that time of the year where we go back and reflect on the absolute garbage that was in the previous year. Now, for me personally, I don't do a top worst. Like, I'll say a bunch of ones that I thought were ass, and I will end with the one that I thought was most ass. This is more so just a bunch of movies that were either very disappointing, knew they were going to be bad, or were even worse than what I thought they'd be. There'll be some honorable mentions, of course. We're going to speed run through these. Moana 2, entire film just feels like a high budget straight to DVD or sequel home video that they used to do for all of our animated classics, making a half-assed sequel. Gladiator 2, everything that the first one had, but none of the subtlety, none of the reasoning, none of the emotion, none of the gripping intensity that the first one had. Absolutely washed down version. Heretic. I like 80% of this movie, but that ending, holy shit, that ending is an absolute massive example of someone not knowing how the fuck they want to end their movie. Ministry of Gentlemen of Warfare. This felt like if a film student tried to do a Guy Ritchie movie. And what sucks is this is actually a really interesting story in real life. It's just a shame that it's so terribly done in this movie. All right, now we're going to talk about the actual craptitude of the year, and I'm going to start off with a hothead one here. Longlegs. This movie wasn't scary. This movie wasn't interesting. This movie wasn't entertaining. This movie was nowhere near as good as people said it was. There was a ton of people who were saying, oh, this is the scariest movie I've ever seen. I swear, these are the same people that if they were to hear a cup fall in the kitchen, they would piss themselves to death. Such a over-embellishment of Osgood Perkins's skill to the point where it's so pretentious that I feel that he's farting right next to me and sniffing his own ass juice while I'm watching the movie. Yes, there were some decent shots, not gonna deny that. Got really overused with that wide lens though, admittedly. Nicolas Cage is very creepy, but I never found him scary. I just found him as Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage with a terrible prosthetic mask on. And the ending, if you had watched any of Osgood Perkins's movies, which I hadn't, I just looked up a bunch of the synopsises for his other movies, I knew how this movie ended. And so people who are like, whoa, it's such an unbelievable twist. This is what happens when a lot of people who don't watch horror movies watch horror movies. They're all pansies. Now we're going from one end of the spectrum to the other. I saw this only a couple of months ago and it looked interesting, but holy shit, talk about a movie that had absolutely no money into it to the point where the lead actor, I think, is barely being paid enough to stay awake. Slingshot was shit. The instant that the movie started, I was like, oh no. Oh no. This is a movie where all of the budget clearly went into hiring Lawrence Fishburne and Casey Affleck, and that's it. Nothing went anywhere else. Absolute complete lack of logic of any kind of space travel is horrendous. The costume design is laughable when they put on a space helmet, yet they're still wearing a regular shirt and have open hands out. Again, a movie that just had nothing going for it. Absolutely nothing. But while that movie had nothing going for it, at least it had a point. Rumors does not. This is a movie that has a great cast to it. It has a pretty funny concept to it, and it has some pretty good dark jokes in the trailer, but that's it. For three guys who apparently are pretty well known for making obscure movies, one of them being Guy Madden, who made a movie called My Winnipeg, if I'm correct. I still need to see that movie. Never found what on earth it actually wanted to be other than being absurd. It's like if David Lynch had a fever dream and then just was like, you know what, I'm gonna put like 5% effort into this. There's a brain at one point. Alicia Vikander's in this movie, and then she leaves. It just never made any sense and never really explained why it was playing before me. And then the movie comes to an end, and it feels exactly the same, lacking of point. It just had no purpose to it. There's nothing redeeming about it other than a few bits of really decent humor. But that does not excuse an hour and 40 minutes of nothing happening. But now we're going into a movie that knows exactly what it was, but it's still terrible. Werewolves. I thought this was a AI generated trailer at first. I thought that this was a joke trailer at first, like something from the Grindhouse movies. No, this was 100% a real movie, and it is 100% bad. The antithesis of a cool concept of the idea that something like The Purge happened ages ago, but it turned everyone into werewolves, was out in the moonlight. And so this is apparently what people have been preparing for, but yet everyone is a fucking idiot. Yes, the werewolves look cool, but they could only look cool standing still. because that's clearly where all the budget went to in the prosthetics. It's such a bad movie. You keep on coming back to a bunch of characters that you do not care about. I almost walked out. People in the theater actually walked out when I was watching this, and I don't blame them. But a movie that I did not go and see in theaters, but I know was bad because I saw it just recently, it was Madam Web. Holy shit. This is by far one of the worst movies I've seen in a very long time. When the instant that the villain's ADR is terrible, the first time he appears on screen, which is in the opening of the movie, and his voice does not match what his lips are doing, you already got a bad movie. And I do not know what the fuck the former CEO of Sony's movie department is smoking, thinking that, oh, it's just the critics. Buddy, you are so far up your own ass that Osgood Perkins is looking at you thinking you're a bit overindulgent. You do not know what makes a good movie anymore. Sony has not understood that for quite a long time, and these movies were just amazingly terrible. Morbius is boring. Craven, from what I've heard, is just a very poorly put together movie, but Madam Web is a true gem of what it is to be a piece of shit. But on another form of terrible, shitty media adaptations, Borderlands was not great. This wasn't the worst movie of the year. There was much more worse than it, but it's just such a shallow attempt at the fan base. You've got Kevin Hart here, who is so clearly here for a paycheck. It's absurd. Everyone is pretty much the same kind of feeling, except for Drago's son from Creed 2, who's playing the mask guy. Edgar Ramirez, I swear, this guy just pays to be in nothing but terrible movies. It doesn't have any service to the Borderlands stuff, and for people who even are fans of Borderlands, I have heard none of them say anything positive about this. I just came into this kind of like knowing a little bit about the games and watching it and just thinking, wow, this was how long in development? And then you see that both of the ARIDs are attached to it, and you're like, ah, that makes sense. But now, what do I think was the worst movie of the year? The cream of the crop, the shit of the shit, the dookie of the dookie. You think it might be Joker 2. Joke's on you, I didn't see that this year. I knew that movie was going to be bad. I knew it was going to be shit. Todd Phillips is such an arrogant asshole. The fact that the first movie is as good as it is pure fluke and fucking chaos coming together to create a little bit of lightning. But there was no way they were going to do that again, and I was 100% correct. Did you know that DC wanted to give this guy the creative control over everything? They wanted to give him James Gunn's job initially. Warner Brothers are run by fucking morons. But that is not the worst movie of the year that I saw. No. The worst one I saw, I had to keep reminding myself I saw it because I had tried to wipe it from my memory. You might have too. Rebel Moon Part 2. The Scar Giver, like whatever this fucking garbage is called. My god. Seven Samurai is 3.5 hours long. The original cuts of Rebel Moon work out to being around 4 and a bit hours, part 1 and part 2. That still feels twice as long as Seven Samurai. For a movie that is such a blatant ripoff of this, it doesn't do any service for itself. It has such a boringly drawn out battle sequence because of all the fucking slow motion. You have characters that have zero development or zero purpose. Fucking played off Knife Hands Lady so much in the trailers in the first movie to be outdone by 6 people. It was so unclimactic. Then you have the ship battle, which maybe on concept kind of looks cool, but until you realize that everyone is standing around like an NPC waiting to be shot. You have a villain that no one cared about who was already beaten in the first movie, so what are the fucking chances he's going to do it again? You have no chemistry between any of the actors. You have a death scene that's supposed to make you feel kind of something, but there's absolutely nothing going on because of how poorly Zack Snyder has portrayed anything in this movie. And you had Anthony Hopkins as a goddamn robot who did one thing. You built up this fucking robot and he did nothing. That is what Rebel Moon is. It is Zack Snyder left to his own devices and it just makes garbage. with no oversight, no overcheck. I know some of you be like, oh, you should watch the director's cut because that's the version that he was supposed to do. When you have to make 2 movies and you know that the second one's gonna, like, the second version will be a director's cut because you're trying to go off of that algorithm that didn't really even do anything for the Zack Snyder Justice League movie. If it had done as well as y'all would have said, you would have gone to see it in the fucking theater when it came out. It was there. I got about 20 minutes into the director's cut of part 1 and I couldn't watch a single fucking sequence be drawn out for 20 goddamn minutes. I just couldn't do it. I got to the end of it, I was like, nope, I'm not watching any more of this. So that is why, in my opinion, Rebel Moon Part 2 was the worst movie of 2024. Along with the director's cuts of Rebel Moon 1 and 2. But those are my worst. Those are the cream of the crop, the crap of the crap. But I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. What were your most disappointing movies of the year? What were ones that you thought were going to be good, but then turned out to be bad? And if any of you say Joker 2, y'all deserve it because you should have seen that coming. It's even worse if you say any of the Sony ones too. Looking forward to see what you guys have to say. Anyways, guys, that's all from me. Thank you all for watching my videos in the last year. We did the best we've ever done on this channel. That was kind of crazy. December actually was one of the highlight months, which was cool. A lot of y'all watched my Nosferatu review, which is nice of you. Thank you. Looking forward to what comes about in 2025. I will be doing my most anticipated list very soon, so I'm going to get around to that as quickly as I can. Hope you guys are having a good start to your year. I know there are some people who are not right now. Very, very peculiar and very weird beginning of the year, but I'm hoping that people are doing the best they can and they're working towards the best that they can. Anyways, guys, that's all from me. See you guys next time.